It's time to get into the data on Super Bowl 59, Chiefs and Eagles, and we have the man to talk to about it, the godfather of DVOA and modern football statistics, Aaron Schatz. We're talking Super Bowl 59 right now.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock here. Williamson is out today, but I am joined by a phenomenal guest, somebody we love talking to this time of year and really any time of year, Aaron Schatz at A Shots NFL. You can find all of his DVOA work at ftnfantasy.com. Find them on the socials at ftnfantasy as well. And Aaron, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks for joining me today to talk about Super Bowl 59. I'm pumped for it.
Hey, it's good to be here, and it feels so familiar, like we were just here 2 years ago, and now we're here again.
Real quick, before we get into the Eagles and the Chiefs, I want to start with the teams that didn't make it. And the Baltimore Ravens have been this ridiculous DVOA ranked team for a couple of years now, and they were up there at the top again this year. Can you talk to me about why that is, and how come they can't get over that hump?
I mean, as far as getting over the hump, you know, they've had close losses the last couple of years in the playoffs to other good teams. That's what happens. But the reason why they rank so high in my numbers is that they play other good teams in the regular season and demolish them. Like when people say to me, "Oh, you have the Ravens too high, you have the Ravens too high," I feel like saying, What do you want? What else do you want teams to do? Like they played the Bills in the regular season and they beat them 35-10. They played Houston and they beat them 31-2. Last year they beat Detroit, San Francisco, Miami, who had a good team, Cleveland, who had a good team. Like, I mean, this is the last couple of years. They've destroyed other good teams. That in history has been the best indicator of a championship team, is that they win big over other good teams. So why the Ravens haven't pulled it off in the playoffs, I don't know. The thing about the Ravens is there's 3 seasons that are really ranked high. And if you change the formula to drop one of those seasons to try to make it more accurate to predict the playoffs better, you end up raising one of the other seasons because the strengths and weaknesses of the Ravens have not been the same in 2019, 2023, and 2024. So unless you're going to put in some variable that says Lamar Jackson can't get it done in the playoffs, which, as we know, history is filled with players who couldn't get it done in the playoffs until the year that they did, you're not going to really be able to adjust the fact that the Ravens come out so high in the regular season.
The next highest team that is also not in it is the Detroit Lions, and they had a phenomenal season. Obviously, some injuries on both sides of the ball. Can you chalk it up to injury why they're not here? Why they weren't able to get by a young budding superstar quarterback and the Washington Commanders? Commanders were still a good football team. They were, I think, 10th this year in DVOA for you overall. And we'll talk about why the Eagles were able to beat the Commanders, but why are the Detroit Lions not here in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, the Detroit Lions offense did not have its best game, and I don't think you can blame that on injuries. But their defense, absolutely. At a certain point this season, their defense just ran out of guys. And their defense declined significantly in the last few weeks, bumped up again for the game against Minnesota, and then went back to struggling again in the game against Washington. They just ran out of dudes. I don't remember a team that was anywhere near as good as Detroit in the first half of a season that had that many injuries, not to a quarterback.
It's pretty ridiculous that they were able to overcome the injuries that they had. And look at a team like the 49ers who had a ton of injuries as well. And they kind of collapsed around those injuries, but the Lions were able to rally, continue to make it into the playoffs. They won the 1 seed. And it looked like they were strong going into the playoffs. And all of a sudden, they were one and done after that bye week. And they ran into a quarterback that is probably, I would guess, if they redrafted the NFL right now and everybody started at 0, he'd probably be a top 5 pick in the NFL behind just a handful of, Burrow, Lamar, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. Like, I think especially if you could get his contract.
Right.
The thing about him versus those other quarterbacks is he comes way more cheap for the next 3
years. That might be enough to take him over Joe Burrow. How good was he? And was he the key? Was he the big difference? What else changed in Washington this year?
We had him as the 4th highest rookie quarterback season in terms of total value over the last 45 years. So he was really, really good. EPA stats actually have him even higher than that, but that's because Washington was so good on 4th down specifically. And my stats, which are a little bit more predictive, don't see 4th downs as being quite as important because they're not necessarily as predicted. It's such a small sample size that it doesn't necessarily predict that you're going to get 4th downs till the end of time. But he was fantastic. I mean, it was absolutely fabulous rookie season. And the remarkable thing about this year is there is a possibility that all 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round are going to be good. Because while May and Williams didn't have the best stats, they showed a lot of promise. Penix showed a lot of promise in his 3 games. Obviously, we haven't seen McCarthy yet. Nix was better than anybody expected, and Daniels was fantastic. It could be we get 6 good quarterbacks out of this.
Ben Johnson might go a long way to helping out Caleb Williams to get in there as well. And JJ McCarthy, before he got hurt, I think was turning some heads as well over there in Minnesota. So it's just a fascinating group, and it never happens. Like all 6 hit, like somebody had to be a ridiculous bust. And so we'll see how that ends up going. But good return so far, and stock up for all of those first round quarterbacks from last year. I don't think this class is going to match up to that one as far as rookies go. You mentioned 4th downs there, and Williamson wanted me to ask you about 4th downs because he found it fascinating that the final 4 teams in the playoffs this year were the 4 best teams on 4th downs this year. But
I think there's a little bit of randomness in that. Like I said, the success on 4th down is much more important than it is predictive, right? Because the difference between succeeding and failing on 4th down is a turnover.
Right.
But it's not necessarily because there's so few of them that they're not necessarily predictive of how you'll do on 4th down in the future. I will say Reed is generally conservative on 4th downs compared to the average coach in the current NFL. So while they were successful when they went for it on 4th down, they didn't go for a ton of them, whereas the Eagles go for a lot of 4th downs.
Next, let's talk Kansas City Chiefs. Let's talk Philadelphia Eagles. Where do the advantages lie in Super Bowl 59? And how the heck did the Chiefs keep doing this? Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. And here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. And we're talking about projections on more or less rushing yards for a player, passing yards, rushing touchdowns, and so on. And Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where one starting quarterback only needs to throw for 1 yard to win. So you pair that with one more correct pick, and you're already cashing out. So check out the promos tab to tail any of the super sweet Millie winners big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. So download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at Prize Picks. Run your game. Back with Aaron Schatz. He is the Chiefs Analytics Officer at FTN Fantasy. Find all of the DVOA metrics over there. Phenomenal stuff. Always learn a lot when I talk to Aaron. Let's go to the Kansas City Chiefs and the One of the things that's pretty amazing about the Chiefs, obviously they're making a run to try to win their third straight Super Bowl. So a lot goes right for that football team every single week and every single year. And this is a little bigger sample because this is a full season's worth of games now. The Kansas City Chiefs have won 17 straight one-score games. Can they be that much better than everybody else in something that is helping them win these football games?
That is so random usually. I mean, the thing about the one-score games is that they come in different flavors. On one hand, you have something like the Raiders game, where they were all set to lose, and then the Raiders fumbled a snap. The Chiefs did nothing. They jumped on it, but like that was all like the Chiefs did not force a fumble. It was just complete and total luck. And on the other hand, you have games where Kansas City wins by one score, but they end the game on the opposing 13-yard line. And if they weren't winning with time running out, they would score more points, right? So that's not really a one-score game. So it's a mix of the two things. The problem we have is the problem that basketball people have, which is what do you do if you believe that teams are specifically not trying their hardest in the regular season? How do you then use regular season stats to predict the postseason? Kansas City has been better on both offense and defense in the playoffs over the last 7 years by about 10 percentage points of DVOA on each side of the ball. But the question is Kansas City really have something that makes them better in the playoffs? Or did they just happen to flip heads 7 straight years? And sometimes that happens. You have to remember that teams that succeed like this in the playoffs will succeed until the year they don't. Like the Patriots. The Patriots had a very similar thing going on from 2013 to 2018, where they were about 10 percentage points better on both sides of the ball in the playoffs. And of course, they won 3 Super Bowls. And then in 2019, they went out, they played the Titans, and they were awful.
What is it about the Chiefs? And first of all, where did they land for you DVOA wise? What are the strengths for the Kansas City Chiefs? What advantages do they have? And do you think you have a good feeling about what their secret sauce is? Like, why are they as good as they are and keep winning these football games?
They finished 8th in the regular season, but that included the Week 18 game where they really laid down. I mean, there are games where teams sit their starters, but nothing like what the Chiefs did with the Broncos in Week 18. So you've got to take that out. If you take out the Week 18 and you add the playoffs, they're number 4, with the Eagles at number 3. Detroit and Baltimore would be ahead of them. So it's not like the Chiefs were, I said a lot during the season, they were like the worst 15-1 team ever. But the worst 15-1 team ever is a serious Super Bowl contender because there haven't been a lot of 15-1 teams. And if you're the worst one of them, you're still a pretty darn good team. Nobody ever doubted that the Chiefs were going to be in the mix once we got into the postseason. I posted last night. It was really funny. I'm not going to New Orleans until Wednesday. I wish now that I had gone on Monday because I want to ask the Chiefs players at media night, what is it like to have no doubters at all? What is it like to have everybody believe in you? Like, football players are so often, they motivate themselves with nobody believes in us. This is a team that literally everybody believes. Not everybody believes that they're going to win, but there's not a single person who thinks they have no chance to win. Like, I guarantee you there are people who feel the Eagles have no chance to win. There is not a single person on earth who thinks the Chiefs have no chance to win. They have no doubters.
I mean, that's amazing. I would love to hear the answer to that question. Yeah. And how do you keep getting up for that? And there's no like chips on your shoulders anymore. You are the one that everyone's gunning for, and everyone believes that you are going to win. Yeah. I mean, that's well put.
So as far as why they do this in the playoffs, look, some of it is Mahomes.
Yeah.
Stats have shown situations where you expect a pass, the higher that the expectation is for a pass, most times quarterbacks struggle in those situations because the defense is set up for it. Mahomes is better in those situations than he is otherwise. It's kind of nuts. And then I think the other thing is Spagnuolo. But I can't tell you why Steve Spagnuolo doesn't run the best defense in the league every year during the regular season. But when it comes to game planning for the playoffs, both with the Giants and with the Chiefs, he has a phenomenal track record.
He's unbelievably good. He's unbelievably good at using the offense's rules against them and trying to get them to, trying to get them to play into his hands and getting them to maybe even change the play to the thing he wants. So if he knows he's going to show you this look, then you're going to do this. But he knows that that's coming, so he's
Which
ready.
is what happened on the 4th and 5 that ended the game with the Bills.
Exactly.
They've even interviewed guys about what the Bills were expecting, and they said the Chiefs were doing something completely different with the same look for the rest of the night. And then all of a sudden they bring that cornerback, and Osiris Torrance is blocking nobody.
Did it to the 49ers multiple times in the 2019 Super Bowl. Steve Spagnuolo was like, look, we are going to lose if the 49ers keep running the ball. So what did he do? He gave them a look that made them, can the play, cancel it into a pass play. And that's the only way they were going to win, is if they got some stoppages and got the clock to stop and got big Chris Jones mitts up there to bat a ball down. And that was the only way they could win. And so he got the 49ers to call the plays that he wanted them to call, which is a phenomenal trait.
That being said, if Nick Foles can beat a Bill Belichick defense,
yeah,
Jalen Hurts can beat a Steve Spagnuolo defense. It may not happen, but it is not out of the realm of possibility.
Oh, that's a perfect segue. Let's talk a little bit more about the Philadelphia Eagles, where they're, and if there's any advantages for them on Super Sunday next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by TurboTax. Taxes used to be waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible, file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can just, sit back and get the most money in return. Guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Finishing up here with Aaron Schatz, A Shots NFL, the Chief Analytics Officer at FTN Fantasy. You can find all of the DVOA metrics at ftnfantasy.com. For just real quick, Aaron, and I meant to do this at the top, but for those folks who don't really know what DVOA is or understand what it is, do you have a simple version to tell people what we're talking about when we reference DVOA?
Sure. We give a success rating to every play based on the down and distance. And then we compare that to a league average baseline, which is adjusted for situation and opponent. And we have all the play-by-play in the NFL to do this stat going all the way back now to 1978.
You got my entire life covered. I like that. Okay.
Pretty much my entire life, too. Pretty close to it.
So let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, they're really good up front, and that's allowed them to thwart some really good quarterbacks and some really good teams that they've played against in the playoffs and get them back here. Talk to me about the Eagles. You mentioned how they were top 4 DVOA for you. And offense, defense, where is the advantage, if there are any, for the Philadelphia Eagles against the Chiefs?
Defense. Their passing game was about 14th. Their running game, including the playoffs, was 3rd. Now, one thing I've written about a number of times, and people have accused me of being an Eagles hater, but they played an easy schedule of opposing defenses. They played the easiest schedule, in fact, of opposing defenses. Saquon Barkley played most of his games against bad run defenses, and they were bad run defenses against everybody else too. It's not like Carolina was a good run defense, but then it was bad against Saquon Barkley. Like they were bad against everybody. So the running game for the Eagles is frankly not as good as you think it is against a better run defense, and Kansas City is a better run defense. But the Eagles' defense was fantastic this season, especially if you take out like September. From October onward, they were easily the best defense in the league. Just great players at every level. First of all, Nolan Smith, breakout year. Jalen Carter, everyone knows, incredible. Milton Williams, underrated. Zach Bond, breakout year. The two rookie corners were fantastic. Cooper DeJean and
Quinyon Mitchell.
Quinyon Mitchell. I mean, just really good players everywhere on that defense. And Vic Fangio, where historically, Vic Fangio has needed some time to install his defense. Vic Fangio teams do not normally flip and all of a sudden play great defense in the first year that he's there. But this year they did.
Is there a place in the margins, like, turnovers or special teams? Is there any advantage for one of these teams here in Super Bowl 59?
Short yardage runs. Right there, right? The Chiefs stopped the Bills on all those sneaks, right? But during the regular season, the Chiefs allowed a 75% conversion rate on short yardage runs. That is below average. And the Eagles were surprisingly only average on short yardage runs. But we know if Hurts is healthy, that tush push is good. And we know that the Eagles are going to go for it more often, and that they call plays on third down with the knowledge that if it's 4th and 1, they will go. And that is an advantage for the Eagles over the Chiefs.
I was blown away by the stat. I had to look it up because there was the big, 60-yard touchdown run to start off the game last week with Saquon Barkley against the Washington Commanders. And I had to go look up the season numbers for yards before contact for the Eagles run game. And I was blown away that they were double league average in yards before contact.
Yeah, that 60-yard touchdown was a great example of why Saquon Barkley, it's complicated, why switching teams allowed him to look better than he would have looked otherwise. Because Saquon Barkley goes 10 yards without being touched. And then he breaks all tackles in an awesome way. But if Saquon Barkley is with the Giants, he never gets the 10 yards that allow him to get into the open field to break the tackles, right? So with a bad offensive line, Saquon looks completely different. It's not that his talent is any different. It's that without the blocking, he doesn't get in position to use his talent. So if Saquon had stayed with the Giants, people are like, oh, poor Giants, they lost him. If Saquon had stayed with the Giants, he would not have had this year.
Yeah, he wouldn't have 2,000 yards, and he wouldn't be in the Super Bowl right now if Saquon was a New York Giant.
No, yeah, I mean Derrick Henry sort of has the same thing going with the Ravens. Some team goes out there and gives a bunch of money to Najee Harris because they look at what Barkley and Henry did this year. They freaking deserve what happens to them for doing that. I mean, come on.
And I've always talked about it. You don't build the cake out of the running back. It's the icing. It's the sprinkles on top of the icing. If you've got it built,
and the icing can be great.
Yes,
but the offensive line is the cake.
Absolutely, yeah. And so, what did the Giants win with Saquon? Not as much as the Eagles. What did the Carolina Panthers win with Christian McCaffrey? Not as much as the 49ers, right? And then you see the Titans, and the Titans had some success with Derrick Henry, but it's a much better situation for him now with the Baltimore Ravens. So do you have any, do you want to throw a prediction on this thing? Who's got the advantage here? Super Bowl 59, Eagles and Chiefs.
I'll tell you what is the thing that is bugging me. And that is not knowing the injury status of Landon, Dickerson, and Cam Jurgens for the Eagles. I think if you look at the fact that the Chiefs are peaking now, and you look a little bit at this historically being better in the playoffs, and then you think about Chris Jones going up against either Jurgens or Dickerson not at 100% or Tyler Steen replacing one of them, I have to favor the Chiefs. The most likely is that it's another close Super Bowl. We don't live in the 80s anymore. We don't have Super Bowl blowouts. But I think you have to favor the Chiefs. And I think even if you feel like it's very equal, those injuries on the offensive line really worry me because that's such an important part of what the Eagles do.
Yeah, if you're building an advantage for the Eagles, it's up front on both sides of the ball. Like that's what they're built around. That's their identity. And
Whereas the Chiefs, by the way, the Chiefs are healthier than they've been all year.
Yeah.
Getting Hollywood Brown back, getting Jalen Watson, the cornerback. They are at their absolute healthiest right now, while the Eagles are dealing with these injuries.
It's a fascinating matchup, and I think it's going to be a really good Super Bowl. I'm personally taking the Chiefs just because they always find a way to do it, and it's not anything that's data driven necessarily for me with this football game. But you talked a little bit about maybe the Chiefs are on cruise control in the regular season and they crank it up in the postseason. Chris Jones is like the ultimate example of that. Like Chris Jones can be a regular dude on first and second down, and then you just can't block him on third down when he needs to make a play. Late in games when you need a play, Chris Jones always makes the play. In the playoffs, Chris Jones always makes the play. It's unbelievable.
I mean, I will point out, not to take anything away from Mahomes, but when they needed a touchdown from Mahomes against the Bills, they got a field goal. And it put Josh Allen in position to make his legacy by leading a touchdown drive. And Steve Spagnuolo and the Chiefs defenders stopped it.
That has to that had to be the roughest night of Josh Allen's life, trying to get sleep that night, because he still made the play. And Dalton Kincaid couldn't come up with it. Like that.
Yeah, although I don't think of it as a drop. To reverse your momentum and dive in the other direction, you're moving left and you notice the ball is now to your right and you have to reverse your inertia and dive to catch. That is a heck of a catch. It would have been awesome if he had made it, but I really don't see that as a drop.
No, I'm with you. And it does seem like these Super Bowl teams sometimes just need something magical to happen. A guy has to make a play, catch a ball against his helmet. Something amazing has to happen to help you get there that you can't even predict or plan for at all.
Yeah, and the Eagles are hoping that something special happens for them, and it's probably a Saquon Barkley. I will say the Chiefs were very, very good this year at preventing explosive runs, right? As good as the Eagles were at getting them, the Chiefs were very good at preventing them. So that is a strength against strength, whereas on the other side, the Chiefs running game gets no explosive runs. Last in the league in explosive runs.
Can't wait. It's going to be a good one. Aaron, always a pleasure chatting with you. You can find all of the DVOA stuff at FTN Fantasy. Find Aaron on the socials at Schatz NFL. Thanks to all the everydayers out there that hang out with Matt and I every single day. Matt will be back with me tomorrow. And, of course, subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. Peacock and Williamson. Talk to you then right here.